Wherefore, lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he that beholdeth himself, and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continuing thereon, he is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work. This man shall be blessed in his deed. If any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is in vain. So I'm going to leave there, and I'm going to go to a point in my life. So in 2004, I reached out to multiple people because I had gotten to a point in my life where there was not enough marijuana in the world that would help me to not want to be angry about everything. And I reached out and I reached out and I reached out, and finally a lovely young lady by the name of Rosalie Kitchen returned my phone call, and she told me that she had a new pastor at this church, and that she would put me in contact with him. And I got connected with Pastor Ron Fleck, and at that point in my life, even though I knew better, I didn't really have a moral compass. Like I said, on a daily basis, I smoked marijuana. I was feeling sorry for myself because of things that happened to me in Desert Storm and my lack of ability to cope with those things in Desert Storm. So adult beverages were a pretty normal thing. I don't feel like that was ever really my struggle in life. It was just something that went along with the lifestyle. My real issue was the marijuana, and so I met up with Pastor Fleck, and I chose to change my life, and I got down on my knees, and I couldn't quit smoking pot, even at the threat of I got caught for possession, and I had a judge that was just nasty. Everybody said, "Boy, you got the right judge for you," and she was going to violate me, and I was going to go to jail because I couldn't quit smoking pot. So even at the risk or the detriment of my freedom, I couldn't quit smoking pot. I was like, I'm going to my probation officer smoking a doobie on the way. I'm like, hey, we're going to get it done one way or another. I was stubborn, and it just wasn't going to happen. So I got down on my knees, and I said, Father, please take this away from me. Please, I cannot do it. And it's not only this, but I have an immoral heart. I'm desiring women help me to overcome these things. I haven't, I was raised as an Adventist, but from 11 to now 34, I did everything that the world had to offer. That was my life, So take my carnal heart away. Help me to overcome my addiction to marijuana. I want to I want to live my life according to your will. So help me to overcome my desire to eat bacon and pork chops and pork steaks on the grill and shrimp on the Barbie and all these things, because I can't overcome these things. I just can't do it. And I went and I began to pray. There was a book I read that it was called He Came to Set the Captives Free. And this guy that I worked with, his name was Monico, he gave me this book, and it was about the involvement of Satan worship into music. And as I was reading this book, I've always been a huge music fan. I threw away hundreds of CDs. I mean, it was a total transformation. I was like, threw it in the dumpster, and God began to bless me. So I went from living in a duplex in Galesburg we had a basement, but we shared the basement with the other side of the duplex. And in order to get to the basement, you had to go out and walk around and go down like one of them doors that you open, and then you walk down the steps. So that's how you got in the basement. So it was myself, it was Sarah, it was Michael and Chris, and then Billy and Jacob on the weekends. And then Sarah's sister and her husband and her 2 kids lived in the basement. And this was my lifestyle. And then within a year, we left out of there. I got my 100%. I got a bunch of back pay. I paid off all my bills, and I went and I purchased my house that I live in today. So in 2005, December 22nd of 2005, I purchased the house that I live in today. So we moved in there, and God is great. You know, my life was so different. It was almost like perfect again. And I was just going through life and danced for about an hour or two, and then finally I answered it, and he's like, "Hey, you gonna come help me?" So I'm like, "All right." So he come and picked me up, and I went and helped him again. And that transitioned into me going and working with Dan every day and becoming an employee of Dan's, and eventually becoming Dan's right-hand man and going and doing these jobs by myself, hanging gutters. And we have fellow gutter people in our congregation. And I was working with Dan, and I'd be sitting there and I'd be like, have to tack down a little bit of the fascia or something, and ting, 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 and boy, it just was like flowery vocabulary. And I was so good at it. I mean, I had perfected it, where I thought I could do like a whole sentence with just the F word, and it just flowed like a fountain. And Dan's like, he's like, "Eric," he's like, we don't do that here. And I'm like, he's like, "You got to get this together." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go home, and I'm home spending that night, and I'm like, "Okay, got this. No more. None." So I go back the next day, and I mean, no sooner I get to where Dan's at, and I trip, and I'm like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Oh," and it got exponentially worse. It just started to explode. And I'm like, he's like, "Dude, if you don't get this together," and anybody that knows Dan personally will know that Dan is the most unexcitable person in the face of the earth. I have seen crisis situations where I would be pulling what little hair I have left in my head out with tweezers, and Dan is just like, that dude is cool as a cucumber. He don't get razzled over anything. The house would be burning down around him, and he'd be just like, I always wondered, maybe I could slap a blood pressure cuff on him and see if he's really that cool or what. But so Dan keeps on me. He's like, you're going to either have to get this together or you're going to have to stay home and I'll have to find somebody else to work for me. And he said, can I give you something to read? And I said, sure. And he says, I want you to open your Bible and I want you to turn to the 3rd chapter of James. So I opened my Bible and I turned to the 3rd chapter of James. And it starts in verse 1. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offendeth not in word, the same is a perfect man, and is able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold, also the ships which they built so great are driven by fierce winds, yet they are turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beast, of birds, and of serpents, and the things of the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. Right here is key. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and wherewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessings and cursings. My brethren, these things ought not so be. Doth a fountain set forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either vine, figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh? Who is a wise man that ended with knowledge among you? Let him show out a good conversation with his works and with meekness of wisdom. But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom is from above, and is first pure and peaceable, gentle and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. And in closing, into the city of God there will be nothing that defiles. All who are to be dwellers there will have to become pure in heart. In one who is learning of Jesus, there will be manifested a growing distaste for careless manners, unseemly language, coarse thought. When Christ abides in the heart, there will be purity and refinement of thought and manner. So not only do we need to not say these things, but when somebody comes up and kicks